The title of my sermon today is called, We'll Stand United. Now, we're all here today, and those that are listening in over the internet or on the phone, we're all trying to live our lives as close as possible to the example that Jesus Christ gave when he was here. To do this, we need to constantly keep ourselves in check. If we find that we've strayed from the path of righteousness, we need to repent quickly and get right back on that path. If we stumble and fall, we need to pick ourselves up and keep going. Even if we've been in the church for many years, it still happens. None of us are perfect. If we were, we'd have a spirit-composed body and you wouldn't see us. But I can see me. I don't really need to see me to know that I'm not perfect. Far from that. If anyone is thinking that I should be or wants me to be, sorry to disappoint you. I'm just like everyone else. So we're all subject to tripping, stumbling, falling, and straying, and of course, drifting. Since we're all subject to these issues, we're all in this together, which means we're not in this alone. In Proverbs 27:17 it says, "Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend." We were not meant to go this alone. If you're one of the ones that falls, don't be afraid to accept help from your brethren. A Christian should never think that they have to be totally independent with no need for help from others. God's church functions best when all the members work together. I mean, think about it. A lot of us came here for the end gathering, and how can we be part of the end gathering if we're not banded together? We have many different sins. Everybody has their own. Some of them are more major. And we have to constantly battle and keep our mind on track. Some of these sins might be swearing, anger, lusting, stealing, whatever it is. If one of us trips up, if it's just a trip, you might not even notice. We pick ourselves up real quick, repent, ask God to help us get our footing back on track, and most everyone doesn't really notice that even happened. But there's times, if one of us hits a weak point in their life, where that sin that they've been so diligently working on, because you have to constantly work on them, they don't just go away. They find that they've exposed it right in front of the church, maybe right there on the front steps, wham! Face plant. They're flat on their face, and everybody gets to see it. So what are we going to do? We're going to run around saying things like, "See, told you. What'd I tell you? Wasn't I telling you? Remember? Now, if we're running around saying that, or thinking that, we might want to read Ephesians 5:12. "For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret." If we're doing that, we're comparing ourselves to someone else. Now, why? I mean, does pointing out flaws of someone else make us feel that we're better than they are? That's similar to the Pharisee that was mentioned in Luke 18. Let's go ahead and read that verse 11. Now, you don't really have to do anything if you're just sitting there waiting around for your brethren to make a mistake so you can exploit it. But, if it makes you think that you're better than that person, let's read Luke 18, verse 11. "The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, 'God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, idolaters, and even as that publican. Glad I'm not like that publican over there. I mean, if we're exploiting their mistakes to simply reassure ourselves that we're doing well, we might want to try next time that we feel the urge to compare ourselves to somebody to give ourselves a shot of humility and compare ourselves to Jesus. The example that he set should inspire us to do well so that we don't have to do nothing and wait for someone else to fall, point out their mistake, and think we're doing better than they are if we're actually doing it. I mean, his loving acceptance should comfort us when we do fall a little short. We're also told not to be hypocrites. Let's turn to Luke 13. We'll read verses 11 through 16. Here's where it's basically saying, don't be selective in choosing which brethren to help and when to help them. Verse 11. And behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bowed together, and could not in no wise lift herself up. Now, some of you know Devin. Ever since he became blind, he hasn't been able to see the faces of his friends, so he has to identify them by sound. This lady here, she's bent in half 18 years. Bent in half, not just bent over. So she can't identify any of her friends by their faces. I guess she has to do it by identifying their feet or something. I don't know. Sally, nice pumps. Verse 12. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him and said to her, Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity. And he laid hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. And the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation, because that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. And said to the people, There are 6 days in which men ought to work. In them, therefore, come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. Well, he needs to pay attention to who he was talking about. Verse 15 and 16. The Lord then answered him and said, You hypocrite. Do not each of you on the Sabbath day loose his ox and his other animals from the stall and lead him away to watering? And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? Well, you keep reading, you find they were a little ashamed. We don't have the option of refusing our brother help based on our own judgment of his or her character, and we cannot pick and choose when we will help our brother. When God places needy before us, we should feel a strong obligation to help them. What we should be doing, if we are going to be the Christians that we're trying to be, if we see somebody, one of our brethren, fall on their face hard, one of us needs to rush over to their help. One of us can be, or we should all be over there helping. One can be helping them back on their feet. One of them can be brushing them off. Another maybe bandage their knee. I mean, they've got an exposed wound right there. If each of us offers a little help, it equates to a lot of help. We can go all the way back to Genesis 14. Let's go ahead and turn there. We'll read verses 14 through 16. This is where we're going to see where Abraham lost no time at all when he learned that his nephew Lot had been thrown in prison. Genesis 14, verse 14. When Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house 318 and pursued them unto Dan. The 318 born in one house. That's a bunch of babies. I mean, we're all going down to the lake to do some swimming. Any of you women care to join us? No, we have 27 birthday cakes to make today. Thank you. Verses 15 and 16. And he divided himself against them, and he and his servants by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is to the left of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought back again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. Now, before Abram went there, he knew good and well that he was putting he and his crew in harm's way. That was a dangerous situation they were stepping into. But he didn't hesitate to rush to Lot's assistance. And we should act without hesitation to come to the aid of our brothers and sisters. Another thing, Abram didn't go it alone. We aren't meant to do this alone. He banded together with brethren, making a strong defense. It would be like these sticks here. This should be what our church is like. If it's all bound together, it's very difficult to break. They can't break us apart. But, of course, we have Satan and his demons constantly tugging here, tugging there, doing all the different things that they can do to get our mind off of God and our Christian way. They want to keep the Christians so busy helping themselves with no concern of helping others so that they can easily be lured away from the flock, and pretty soon they find they're so far removed that they no longer have help from their brethren, and then they shortly realize that they can't even help themselves, and they break. They fall. It's that easy. One by one, everybody falls. Satan knows that he has to, or if he can preoccupy our minds so that we're not focused on the shepherd, he can lure us away and make us an easy target. He uses many techniques all through our lives. He uses TV. He uses video games. Video games are the big one. He uses the internet. The internet's huge. Boy, you get out there on that internet, you start looking for one thing, pretty soon you're off this way, off that way. You can get lost out there real easy. Satan knows that. And he keeps taking you away, breaking us down, and pretty soon, the whole church is falling apart. It's like that Oz syndrome. That's what the New World Order is using to forge their plan. Don't pay attention to reality, the ones behind the curtain here. We want you to focus over here on the picture we're painting and the smoke that we're blowing at you. So everybody's walking around with their head in a cloud because Satan's got them baffled and fooled. Now, how are we going to find the end gathering if we don't pull our head out of the clouds? We need to keep in mind, though, that Oz guy, the one behind the curtain, he was very reluctant in letting the people that were searching for some answers know that the whole time they had a heart. The whole time they had courage, and the whole time they had a brain. And once they realized that was when he made his escape. So we should ask ourselves a big question here. We're all going to band together, stand strong for God, or are we going to fall for Satan? Before I close, I'd like to remind everyone, do not accept the mark, and let's make our day worthy of blessings. Thank you.
Newswatch Magazine presents the analysis of world news in the light of Bible prophecy with David J. Smith.
There is in the world today something that is taking place that you and I need to understand. There is a prophecy in the Bible that many people have wondered how this will literally be fulfilled. It's found in Isaiah chapter 3 and in verse 12. It reads like this in the King James Version. As for my people, this is Israel, but anyone on earth that has been baptized into the name of Jesus for the remission of their sins, they become spiritual Israel. And in Romans chapter 11 it says that those that are of the flesh, Israel, are not all of Israel, meaning that now today God is dealing with a spiritual Israel. And the United States of America in 1892, February 29th, by a 9-0 decision, declared that the United States was a Christian nation. So the Supreme Court did recognize that every part of our Constitution, every part of our state documents proved that we were a Christian nation. So we are the people of God today. Notice what it says, children are their oppressors. Do we find this true in the ghettos of the United States today? And it says women rule over them. What does this mean, the phrase women rule over them? How is it being fulfilled today in your lifetime? And it goes on to say, O my people, they which lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths. So I've got a question today. Is Hillary Rodham Clinton in fact the unelected president of the United States of America? After many months of intense investigation and research, interviewing confidential files and also public documents, a man by the name of Tex Mars, that's written over 30 books, says that he's convinced that Hillary Clinton is the unelected president of the United States. She rules over her husband, Bill Clinton, and is the unchallenged authority at the White House. What's more, Hillary Clinton is not just in a case of a strong and masculine woman nagging and controlling her husband, who just happens to be the president of the United States. Hillary has her own secret agenda, and she's recruited and has given power to a loyalist clique, an elite of radical lesbian and feminist women to carry out this secret and covert agenda. These women friends of Hillary owe to her and to her alone their allegiance. They know that she is their superior, and they're confident that she thinks just identical to them. Are these women true believers in the ultra-liberal ideology called the Plan? That those are working for world government and that these women are a part of it? These women realize that their joint agenda must be achieved. Separately, they cannot achieve this plan. They're a group of women united in a conspiracy to set up a new world order. An order in which female ideals, feminist ideals, shall reign supreme in the world. But just what kind of new world do the Clinton women envision? Already, we're seeing and beginning to see and entertain the fringe element of what this new Orwellian society is going to be all about. I want to give now a little episode that literally happened in Washington, D.C. A woman by the name of Lurleen Stackhouse. She approached President and Mrs. Clinton at their pre-inaugural prayer service. This was held in the AMEC Church in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. I want to quote exactly what she said that she told to Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Clinton. I quote, "When the service concluded, we were asked to stay seated until the President and Mrs. Clinton departed from the White House. However, as they walked down the aisle, I stood and reached out for Mr. Clinton. 'Mr. Clinton,' I whispered, 'America must stop killing babies.' He looked at me with a blank stare. I repeated this statement to him. Hillary, not hearing the comment, then came to me and gave me a hug. And I whispered in a voice audible only to her, 'Hillary, it's against God's law to kill babies.' She stepped back, shaking and trembling, and then grabbed my arm. Her countenance transformed from a pleasant demeanor to the appearance of one being possessed. Her eyes were enraged as she replied, 'It is God's will to kill babies.' I drew back in shock at this blatant and revealing statement. I fully expected her to say, 'It's God's law for women to have a choice,' or maybe some other pro-death rhetoric. But no, she was bold and blatant. I would not have believed it if I had not heard it with my own ears. I walked out with General Colin Powell. As the Clintons got into their limousine, I approached the car again. Through the glass, I continued to plead with Mr. Clinton to stop killing babies. Again, he had a troubled stare. But the killing will continue so long as there is no understanding among church people about holiness. It'll continue so long as Hillary Clinton and her company have their feminist agenda enforced." End of quote. That was a very startling revelation, but this was a true account of something happened at the pre-inaugural address in a service in Washington, D.C. What is a psychopath? A psychopath is an individual, and we're talking about on a sexual level, who has pent-up and perverted sexual drives. They can actually control their outward appearance so that you will not be able to tell what they're really like. The true female psychopath may be a lesbian. They may well tend to keep the facts of her perverted sexual orientation hidden and in the closet. But we must take a look at what happened during the March on Washington by the gays during the spring of 1993. Here's what a lesbian leader stood on the main platform before the audience of untold thousands of lesbians and homosexuals and joyfully divulged this bit of repulsive information. And remember, I'm quoting this. This has already been broadcast on C-SPAN satellite television. It was discussed on the Rush Limbaugh show, and it was buzzed all over Washington, D.C. So I'm not saying something that has not already been made public. I'm quoting the lady that stood before the gay and lesbian march on Washington and giving her identical remark. Quote, "I'm going to tell you a secret. Hillary Clinton has had a lesbian affair. At last, we have a first lady in the White House that we can," and I'll delete the rest of the sentence because it was so repulsive. Was this woman lying to America? Sadly for America, though this lesbian leader's allegation was detailed during the Rush Limbaugh TV program, and even the entire city of Washington, D.C. was talking about it, Hillary Clinton has never made a formal denial. If she was not a lesbian, then she could come out on television and say point blank, "I am not a lesbian. The woman was wrong. She didn't do so." Of course, this was not the first time that stories concerning Hillary's sexual orientation have been published. A Mr. Jack Wheeler, a respected investment advisor and political commentator, wrote in his Strategic Investment newsletter of February 10th, 1993, I quote, "My sources indicate that Hillary Clinton is bisexual and fools around more than her husband. The stories you hear from the Secret Service detailed to guard her and her husband are mind-boggling. It's Hillary that's pushing the White House's homosexual agenda," end of quote. In her support of the lesbian agenda, she's not alone. Hillary cannot be accused of rebelling against her husband over these convictions, because Bill Clinton is also at one agreement with Hillary. The two are not at odds. At the 5th annual meeting called Creating Change, this was a conference held late in 1992 in Los Angeles by the very militant National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. The leader, Urvashi Vaid, V-A-I-D, this was the task force executive director, and it brought cheers from the crowd when she read a letter from Bill Clinton in which the president-elect at that time praised the hard work of the gay rights movement. Clinton wrote, and I'm quoting this from the San Francisco Chronicle, November 14th, 1992, quote, "Without your support," meaning the gays and the lesbians, "our victory on November 3rd would not have been possible," end of quote. Now that they're in office, Hillary and Bill are squandering taxpayers' money to promote the cruelly deceitful lesbian homosexual agenda. For example, in June of 1993, Bill Clinton's transportation department spent $1,900 for a rally to celebrate gay, lesbian, and bisexual Pride Week, complete with buttons that read, "Straight but not narrow." This naturally was a slap at those who oppose the homosexual lifestyle. At this particular rally, Transportation Secretary Pena told the audience that President Clinton endorsed the project. This was documented in the magazine Human Events, June 26, 1993. Perhaps Bill and Hillary Clinton should pay close attention to Isaiah 5, verse 20 in the Bible, where God Almighty warns, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil." In its exhaustive report entitled Secret, FBI documents link Bill and Hillary to Marxist terrorist network. The Sunset Research Group of Wichita, Kansas, proves conclusively that Hillary Clinton has long been an ardent and committed supporter of communism, Marxism, the international Marxist terrorist network. This information was put together by former intelligence officers, and the group obtained FBI documents under the Freedom of Information Act, 2,700 pages of them, that reveal the most abominable atrocities of the organizations that Hillary Clinton has supported. The FBI documents show that Hillary Clinton has had a long association, beginning from her days as a student at Yale Law School, with a pro-communist front group called the Institute for Policy Studies. She was also editor of Yale Review of Law and Social Action. Within the pages of that particular student publication, she called for rioting against police. She called for killing them. In the August 1992 issue of the American Spectre, an article by a Mr. Daniel Wattenberg revealed that while serving as director and chairman of the board of directors of the Socialist New World Foundation as late as 1987 and 1988, Hillary Clinton praised and gave away significant sums of money to several left-wing and communist organizations, including the Institute for Policy Studies, the Committee in Support of the People of El Salvador, which was a Marxist communist front group for the overthrow of El Salvador. She also funded money through that leftist organization to the National Lawyers Guild. She also gave to the radical lawyer that actually supported the Chicago 7, Mr. William Kunstler. He controls a Center for Constitutional Studies, which is a communist Marxist organization. The FBI papers show that among the groups endorsed and funded by Hillary Clinton were the most extreme Stalinist communist organizations in the world. One group to which she gave money, the National Lawyers Guild, held a convention in Austin, Texas, and the delegates sang the Communist International anthem. Here's just one line from that particular anthem, quote, "'Tis the final conflict, let each stand his place. The International Soviet shall be the human race," end of quote. Hillary Clinton, the record shows, also supported subversive groups which aided the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. They funded terrorist PLO Yasser Arafat. They also funded and backed communist North Vietnam during the North Vietnam and the South Vietnam conflict. Now, what's so frightening is that the FBI has been investigating these extremist groups, especially the Institute for Policy Study, for many years. But now that Hillary and Bill Clinton are in command at the White House, the FBI has been ordered to cease and desist investigation. Janet Reno, Hillary Clinton's Attorney General, even fired William Sessions, the FBI director who had been known to be investigating Hillary's background. So he was fired because it was revealed that she did have a background that corresponded to Marxism and terrorism for the Marxist network. But that's not all. Hillary and Bill Clinton have been recruiting communists and other America-hating subversives for key administration posts, especially at the sub-cabinet level, where most of the real work of government takes place. I'll just give a case in point. A woman by the name of Jonetta Cole. Hillary chose Ms. Cole to head the transition team that was in charge of selecting the people who would hold high offices in education, the arts, labor, and humanities. She wears a butch haircut. She's an African-American feminist. Ms. Cole was the president of Spelman College. She was also a longtime friend of Donna Shalala, Hillary's secretary of Health and Human Services. So Donna Shalala and this woman, Ms. Cole, go back a long time. Now, Jonetta Cole just happens to be a fiery-eyed, dyed-in-the-wool communist. This is found in Christian American magazine, March 1993, page 12. The documentation of her background. Cole is an admirer of Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. She was a leader in the Marxist Venceremos Brigade. She led anti-American demonstrations during the Vietnam era. She also headed the Communist Front called the Committee to Stop U.S. Aggression Against Cuba. Ms. Cole was also the president of the communist-inspired United States Grenada Friendship Society. That, once again, is documented in the Christian American magazine, March 1993, page 12. I want to quote now from Insight magazine, September 28, 1992, page 4. Quote, Janetta Cole had exceedingly close ties to the American Communist movement in the 1970s and the 1980s. There is no evidence that she's ever experienced an ideological change of heart. End of quote. So here we have a known, hard, and dyed-in-the-wool communist that has now been placed in government in the United States. There's little substantive difference between the Nazis, which is national communism or national socialism, and communist, which is just international socialism. Both ideological groups call for hardline, central dictatorial control over the people. Now, with Marxist radicals like Janetta Cole selecting the people who now lead the Hillary and Bill Clinton administration, America is now in the process of moving toward the book 1984 and a perfected communist Nazi superstate. Once our proud and free nation does attain to this hideous state of communism, Nazism, its leaders, the present leaders in the House of Representatives and Congress, cannot say that they didn't know what was going on. They do know. Our Congress is especially guilty. The people that you and I supposedly vote to put into the Congress of the United States to represent us. In a June 1st, 1993 speech in his home district, Representative Richard R. May, a Republican from Texas, stated the following, I quote, Hillary Clinton bothers me a lot. I realized the other day that her thoughts are a lot like Karl Marx. She hangs around a lot of Marxists. All her friends are Marxist. End of quote. This was found in an article, Marxist Hillary, in the New American Magazine, August 9th, 1993, page 17. Instead of being applauded in the halls of Congress for telling the truth, Congressman Armay was viciously attacked back in Washington, D.C. by other legislators. Attacking the First Lady as a communist, they said, is absolutely despicable. That was once again reported in the New American. In response, a very frightened Armay from Texas retracted his comments and actually apologized. Too bad, America. No one is left to stand for the truth in the halls of Congress. Hillary has bluntly stated that the goal of the Clinton administration is nothing less than the remaking of the American way of politics, government, indeed its entire lifestyle. That was found in the Wall Street Journal, May 28, 1993. Hillary has purposely refrained from fully explaining to the public what exactly she has in mind. But only 120 days after Hillary and Bill Clinton assumed office, a man by the name of George Will, in his nationally syndicated column, warned readers that there were scary dimensions to the new Clinton White House. Here's what he said, and this was taken from the Austin American Statesman, Austin, Texas, May 24, 1993, page A9. Quote, the Clinton administration's emerging self-portrait is not a pretty picture, but it is becoming clear. It is a picture of an aggressive and comprehensive power grab. End of quote. In a speech at the University of Texas at Austin, Mrs. Clinton talked about her conception of the new politics of meaning. In very serious tones, she said, and I quote, "Let us be willing to remold society by redefining what it means to be a human being in the 20th century, moving into the new millennium," end of quote. This is very remarkable when you stop to think about it. She said, remold society. Redefine what it means to be a human being. She even talked about the new millennium. All of these are catchphrases of the New World Order, the international socialist agenda for a one-world government to take us into the 21st century. In a Newsweek magazine interview, Hillary Clinton suggested that the country must be willing to take drastic measures to break down the end of a breakdown in law and order. These are curious words because, see, in Nazi Germany, before the Nazis literally came into power, they said that they had to crack down and bring an end to the breakdown of law and order. So once again, she's saying the same thing that the pre-Nazi leadership of Hitler did. Notice what the Newsweek article said for February 15th, 1993, under the topic, "We all are in this together." Quote, Hillary Clinton said, "I have advocated highly structured inner-city schools." Now that's very important. She also said, "I have advocated uniforms for kids in inner-city schools. I have advocated that we have to help structure people's environment." End of quote. Is this a call for uniformed brown shirt brigades in our cities, just like it was before the Nazis took complete control of Germany? The Clintons have also spawned a plan for a national youth corps. Will this eventually evolve someday during the 1990s into a communist Nazi youth organization? Didn't we see back in February 15th to the 22nd of 1987 in the movie America, spelled with a K, on ABC television? The young people were organized and they wore red bandanas around their neck. And ultimately they were talking to the adults and said, anyone who will not enter into the new age will be crushed. The Clinton administration has also offered up proposals to set up a universal registration program for infants, your tiny children, to guarantee and enforce vaccinations, and to issue a smart card to every United States citizen as a part of their health care insurance plan. The whole idea is control of our lives, just like the prophetic book 1984 stated, that each one of us would be given control over our lives from the time we're born to the time we die and are put in a grave. That's the intention of Hillary Clinton and the women that she's bringing into the White House. I believe this is very revealing because a Professor Carol Quigley wrote a famous book, Tragedy and Hope. To be exact, this book was getting into the hands of the public so fast that they quit printing it and took it off the shelves, and you can't even hardly find it anymore. And you must remember that Bill Clinton was trained at the Jesuit Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. by Professor Quigley. Here's a direct quote from the book Tragedy and Hope, which was a 1966 publication. Quote, "The individual's freedom and choice will be controlled within very narrow alternatives by the fact that he will be numbered from birth and followed as a number through his educational training, his required military or other public service, his tax contributions, his health and medical requirements, and his final retirement and death benefits, end of quote. That sounds like Bill and Hillary Clinton in the 1990s. This is the government without a heart and without soul, because everything will be computerized and you'll be nothing but a number traced all the way through your life. Hillary Clinton has said that the goal is the reconstruction of society. And the complete text of her speech was in a magazine, TIKKUN, in May-June of 1993. Mr. Albert Weeks, a professor of politics and history at New York University, and also national security editor of the New York City Tribune, notes that this is essentially the same phraseology that Hillary and Bill Clinton has used in recent years by communist powers. The Soviet Union's communist overlord, remember in the 1980s, was Mikhail Gorbachev? He spoke of restructuring. In their language, it was called perestroika. Then you had China's Red Butcher, Lai Ping. They employed the same catchphrase. In the Chinese language, it was Kai Tao, and it meant the same thing, restructuring of society. This was found in the publication Global Affairs, the spring of 1987, page 139, showing that the communist used this phraseology. Then he applied it up to date in the 1990s to the Clintons' phraseology. Now, most of the former Soviet republics still have no true democracy. It's the same old hardline communists that are still in charge. In China, the massacre at Tiananmen Square gave the whole world a very clear picture of the rigid limits on freedom by China's restructuring of society. What happened there? They killed and slaughtered thousands of individuals. However, we need to look not overseas, but what is happening in the United States of America to see how the restructuring of society is going to occur in America. On April 19th, 1993, in Waco, Texas, with the full approval of the Oval Office, unleashed by Janet Reno, a version of the Tiananmen Square massacre, the shooting and burning of 86 individuals of the Branch Davidian by the Clinton administration. It was a SS Gestapo style raid, and it was nearly a carbon copy of exactly what happened 50 years ago to the day in the Warsaw ghettos when they first attacked the Jews. The massacre of the Jews in the Warsaw ghetto occurred April 19th, 1943, exactly 50 years to the day of the Branch Davidian slaughter. I'm here to tell you Satan's forces have long sought to stamp out Jews and Christians. Why? Because Jews still have God's law in the Old Testament of the Bible. Christians have God's laws plus the testimony of Jesus in the New Testament. And David Koresh's followers claim to be Christians. They even flew a Jewish Star of David flag over their church grounds. Even though I've proven many times that the Star of David flag is an occult, two triangles interlaced, and it was the Magen David back in the 15th century that first brought this into being. It was from the occult and has nothing to do with God and the Bible. But they didn't know that, and they flew this over their church grounds. But you see, occultists have a very morbid and fanatical obsession with numbers and dates. Therefore, could the 50th anniversary of the attack on the Jews in the Warsaw area been a date that they selected and waited for to kill those people in the compound in Waco, Texas? I believe it is, because I know the background of Bill and Hillary Clinton and all of those that they're appointing to the White House. Now it appears that a man by the name of Michael Lerner, a left-winger, in other words, socialist, who evaded the draft during the Vietnam War, now holds the distinction of being Hillary Clinton's New Age guru or teacher. Lerner, who is the publisher of an offbeat Jewish journal, Tikkun, Tikkun, helped Hillary Clinton develop her politics of meaning and also her reconstruction of society themes that she's implementing today. In Marlon Maddox's newsletter called Freedom Club Report in August 1993, page 3 and 4, he discusses this odd guru-student relationship between Michael Lerner and Hillary Clinton. Quote, "A sign of the ideology-driven White House agenda is the relationship between Hillary Rodham Clinton and her newly found political guru, Michael Lerner. Lerner has recently gained some fame with articles in major newspapers pushing what he and the First Lady call the politics of meaning. At a recent White House reception, Hillary saw Lerner and exclaimed, 'Am I your mouthpiece?' So Hillary admits she's just parroting whatever Michael Lerner is teaching her. So if this is the case, who is Michael Lerner? Will the real Michael Lerner stand up? Michael Lerner is a former leader of the Students for a Democratic Society, a 1960s mob of rioters at the University of California at Berkeley. They're a socialist communist organization. Michael Lerner was a former economics professor at Berkeley in California that a colleague described as turning his classes into a little Marxist cell. Michael Lerner was a militant who once told a newspaper, "I dig Karl Marx," and he posed for a picture in front of a communist flag. Michael Lerner was a man who got married to one of his students by performing the wedding ceremony himself, and he declared that one man, one woman marriages needed to be smashed and destroyed. But that's not all. While both Michael Lerner and Hillary Clinton have tried to sound spiritual on proposing something called the politics of meaning, what they really mean is hardly spiritual at all. All you have to do is read some of Lerner's quotes. He sounds like he wants to turn industry into worker discussion groups. He wants to turn schools into group psychotherapy sessions to turn children against their parents and liberate them from the family. He wants to take foreign policy and make it a big 1960s love-in. And that's about what it amounts to. At the same time, Michael Lerner and Hillary Clinton will keep the Bible and prayers out of the public schools. He will also keep family values like abstaining from all sexual contact with the opposite sex out of the schools. And they will not allow the 10 Commandments to be taught in the public schools. So the problem is seen in a 1991 quote where Michael Lerner reduces all of the nation's problems down to one disease. He said the problem with America is free enterprise. In other words, he's a socialist communist and wants to take away all profit motive from the American people and turn it into a stagnant society like every communist country has always been. But both Bill and Hillary Clinton say they love Michael Lerner. So I think we should get ready for more of the radicalism of the 1960s. In his 1978 book called New Age Politics, a man by the name of Mark Satin, S-A-T-I-N, signaled the emergence of the new politics and culture that will be typified by the Clinton administration. He wrote, and I'm quoting, "The new politics is arising out of the work and ideas of the people in many of the movements of our time. Notice now what the new politics of the Clinton administration is identified as by this man, Mark Satin. The feminist movement, the environmental movement, the spiritualist movement, the human potential and new world order movements," end of quote. He then went on and added, a third force in politics is on the world scene today. He said that it's not politics of Marxism or liberalism, it's beyond both of those. So it's bringing mankind, according to his book, to a higher consciousness. Isn't that exactly what you see in all the New Age terminology? That mankind has to come into a new consciousness so that they can receive Lucifer, the light bringer, and the one who is guiding mankind into the new millennium. Mark Satin's book is very perceptive, and it accurately portrays the New Age politics of Hillary Clinton and her women's network that is now taking over the White House. Their goals, yes, are beyond Marxism. They are beyond liberalism. To be exact, they want to bring a new power into the White House. I want to discuss that new power in the White House for a moment. She's spiritual and religious. Words like God and heal and transform and spirit rolls easily off her lips. But is her God the Jesus of the Christian Bible? Is her spirit the Holy Spirit sent from the Father to those that believe in Christ? Is she, the person I'm talking about, Hillary Clinton, out to heal the environment of Mother Earth? Or is she wanting to heal broken and lost souls, human beings? Which is she trying to do? The early church and all of God's ministers since then have tried to heal the souls of human beings, to convert them to the one and only God by the Holy Spirit. The question really becomes then, is Hillary Rodham Clinton a true Christian? The Bible says, by your faith, by their fruit shall you know them. Or is she a modern day false apostle, a worker of deceit? Which is she? Do we now have a woman of God in the White House? Or do we have a New Age goddess that the whole feminist movement and lesbian world and international socialism and communism are clapping their hands with joy to accept? I want to begin our search for the truth as to who is really sitting in the White House by examining a little of today's radical feminist movement, the contemporary revival, and the alarming growth of the ancient goddess religion. As we'll see, this means more than simply using the term she for God and making God the Father, God the Mother. The goddess movement seeks to dethrone God the Father, replace him with the goddess of Rome, Greece, Babylon, and Egypt. The old feminine spirituality started a long time ago. It had its origins in the Garden of Eden, if we want to look at it closely. When a woman by the name of Eve was created and she dominated her docile and unmanly husband called Adam in a conspiracy against God. Was that event in human history the beginning of someone being dominated by Satan the devil, and the ultimate looking forward to the fulfillment of the time when the feminist movement and worship of a goddess in the place of God the Father would come on the world scene? When striving for power, women striving for power, the end result is a universal yearning by unstable, masculinized, dominant-oriented feminists to control men and other women whom they consider to be socially and spiritually inferior to them. This is the power grab that is taking place in the United States of America today. It's an image of a society that is dominated by women in high positions of government, that is literally rebelling against God. It's the story of Adam and Eve reborn, being played all over again. It was the woman Eve who first communicated with Satan in the garden, and who then partook of the forbidden fruit, or broke God's law, and then persuaded Adam to do the same, to rebel against God. She was the archetypical leader of the New Age woman today. All New Age women are consumed by the hunger of Eve to disobey God, to rebelliously pluck and eat the forbidden fruit. I'm not talking about all women, just certain kinds of women. And to convince men to follow their lead. A woman by the name of Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was a Clinton supporter. She was also nominated for the vice presidency of the United States in 1984 on the Democratic Party convention, but she did not go onto the ticket that finally ran. She wrote a very revealing book entitled The Hunger of Eve. Here's what she says, quote, "I have always identified with Eve. Throughout all of human history, we've been reaching for this mystical tree. Now we collectively stand at this fateful tree, driven here by our hunger." She means for power. Today we can create new worlds of undreamt possibilities for all people. We stand at that point in history where the hunger of Eve can be fulfilled. End of quote, page 8 and 9, her book, The Hunger of Eve. A man by the name of John Randolph Price, head of the Planetary Commission, a New Age spiritual group based in Austin, Texas, sponsored the huge World Day of Healing in 1986. He tells of a vision that he had. I want to quote this vision. This was found in his book, In Practical Spirituality, page 20. In February 1985, during a group rebirthing session in the mountains of northern Georgia, I was taken back to just before this incarnation, then carried into the future, where I experienced the most beautiful vision of my entire life. There seemed to be millions of us, all moving up the side of a mountain, each carrying a lighted candle in our right hand. There was no effort in climbing the mountain. It was as though we were on ground level, yet there was a sensation of moving up. At one point, I looked up and back, and as far as I could see in both directions were men, women, and children, and the fire from those individual candles seemed to illuminate the world with dazzling light. As we all reached the top, a beautiful light being in the form of a woman raised her arms and spoke these words to me: "The planet is healed. End of quote. Price's mother goddess has given him the inspiration to announce the coming of a new golden age in which all of humanity will become one, in which all existing religions will be transformed and all national borders erased. In his organization's bulletin called Commission Update, March 1988, page 4, he said, quote, "You are the master builders of the new civilization, and our work shall not be in vain. A new world will be revealed through us." End of quote. This is a counterfeit of what God the Father and Jesus Christ are doing through them and through the Christian religion, preparing people for when Jesus Christ returns to establish the kingdom of God. In the book, The Great Cosmic Mother, Monica So, S-J-O-O, and Barbara Moore depicted that a new age is already near us. "The goddess is here," she said. "She has returned, and the world shall be made whole." Listen to what she said on page 430 and 431. Quote, "Women are designed by the cosmos to lead the human world back now to the great celebration. We will return to the goddess, the mother, the great mother of all life, as her magic children." End of quote. So the goddess religion is returning, and those in the White House and those talking to them firsthand are also worshipers of a mother goddess. At their liberal inauguration, this was in 1993 now, this is the Clinton administration, rock bands thrill Bill and Hillary Clinton and all of their liberal Hollywood friends to the beat of the Beatles' tune, "Say You Want a Revolution." Also, they played Fleetwood Mac's catchy tune, "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow." In other words, we're going to have a revolution and bring a new tomorrow. This was a throwback to the old 1960s hippie generation. The Hindu gurus preached about the great mother goddess who would soon recreate planet Earth anew. Now in the 1990s, according to Hillary Clinton and the women in the White House with her, this goddess has arrived. The time for renewal, the reinventing is here, and it will be led by Hillary Rodham Clinton and her women in the White House. Rosemary Ruther is a professor of theology at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston, Indiana. She's one of today's leaders in convincing women that their time has finally come. In her book, Woman Guides, Readings Toward a Feminist Theology, page 213, look what she wrote. Quote, "Today, women are in the vanguard of the aborting civilization." In other words, they're out front leading the way for the new civilization. And it is to the woman, or to the women, that we look for salvation in the healing and restorative waters of the age of Aquarius. It is to such a new age that we look now with hope as the present age of masculism succeeds in destroying itself. In other words, masculinity, men have tried to destroy civilization, so now women will restore it. Now the final sentence of this quote, "The rot of masculine materialism has indeed permeated all spheres of 20th century life." End of quote. A woman by the name of Naomi Goldenberg, who teaches religion at the University of Ottawa in Ottawa, Canada, as a feminist theologian, agrees with what Rosemary Ruther said. Naomi Goldenberg wrote a book called Changing of the Gods. She says that they must overthrow the existing forms of Christianity and Judaism to prepare for the New World Order and the New Age. She wrote, and I quote, "God is going to change. We women are going to bring to an end God. We will be the end of Him." End of quote. She was very happy in writing these things because, you see, Goldenberg announces that woman church will replace the obsolete Christian and Jewish faiths. And what is woman church? In her book, Changing of the Gods. This is her words taken right out of the book. Her new woman church and the women that will be running the world, it is witchcraft, she says, is a perfect substitute for Christianity. End of quote. Her book, Changing of the Gods. But many people will say, but Hillary has not advocated the overthrow of Christianity. She's not proposed an end to God. I want to stop and say, wrong. Hillary has indirectly, not openly said it to the public, advocating the end of the patriarchal or masculine God and the overthrow of Christianity. She's done it in a very ingenuous manner. Not open to the public to see, but it's what people do as what their real belief is. The new religion approves the sacrifice of unborn babies. In other words, abortion. Does Hillary Clinton want abortion? Yes, she does. Also, this new religion celebrates lesbian sex. Is it okay with her? Yes. Their biggest backers were lesbian and the gay movement. It also ordains marriage between homosexuals, which she has agreed with. As Rosemary Ruther said, the wise women, or the wise woman, knows that a resistant humanity is not yet ready for the complete rooting out and removal of traditional Christianity. But she says subversion and sabotage by women and the men whom they dominate will fix that. She says that once they have taken control, what will follow is a new kind of Christianity freed from the bonds of patriarchy, in other words, male domination, and purified of the last vestiges of sexism, clericalism, and militarism. End of quote. That was the article on the left in the Catholic Twin Circle, November 20th, 1988, page 10. So the Christian church is about to be religiously cleansed by Hillary Clinton and her women in the White House. They may call it Christianity, but they will change all of its doctrines, and they will put pressure upon those who remain within true Christianity. A Catholic nun by the name of Madonna Kolbenschlag is an advocate of the new cleansed Christianity. In a very blistering address, Ms. Kolbenschlag gave before 2,500 liberal Catholic nuns, priests, theologians in Washington, D.C. Here's what she said, quote, "The myth of the Father God is largely a product of the Judeo-Christian tradition." End of quote. Then she went on in her speech and says this tradition is changing, and now we are about to see a new Holy One. And that was in the article, "The Goddess Goes to Washington," Fidelity Magazine, December 1988, page 36 to 44. She was cheered and given a standing ovation. Then she went on to say, the Holy One is breaking through the conscience of humanity as the goddess. End of quote. So Hillary Clinton and her women in the White House no doubt see the new, fast emerging feminist theology as an ally in their efforts to establish a worldwide collectivist global superstate ruled and run by women. But they better be careful, you see, because the goddess is not the true creator God of the Bible. And God is not about to be dethroned by some feminist, radical, lesbian women. They're going to be very surprised when their beast system is established, and suddenly, after 3.5 years, the great God of the universe sends His Son, Jesus Christ, back to this earth and destroys their system. You see, the frightening fact is that the goddess is simply the devil in feminine disguise. That's all. She is he, and he is the serpent. And the serpent is that great dragon that is deceiving the whole world. There's an article called Reclaiming Serpent Power. In this very eye-opening article, Alexandra Kovatz, who was a former program director for an apostate Catholic priest by the name of Matthew Fox, she headed up the Institute in Culture and Creation Spirituality. Here's what she wrote. In Hindu and Buddhist India, the elevation of serpent power, the Kundalini, is a leading method of yoga symbolism. What's wrong with yoga? It's a spiritual exercise, even though it looks physical. It is the tantric image of the female serpent coiled in the base of the spine. The aim of yoga is to rouse the serpent power, to lift her head and bring her up the channel of the spine to the crown of the head. She is a symbol of transformation as she moves up through the human body. Befriending this serpent creature can add to your own process of transformation. Each of us must reclaim the power of the serpent. We can befriend the serpent to help us choose life and good. I believe that it's time for us to reclaim the positive dimensions of serpent power in our lives. End of quote. Publication, Creation, September, October, 1988. Now do you begin to see why when people get involved in yoga and go at it, they think they have a power within them that is supernatural? And it is. It is a demon, and they come into contact with a spirit realm, the serpent. A man by the name of David Myers, who came out of the occult, wrote, quote, "In the occult, the female force is dominant," end of quote. Remember a woman by the name of Jezebel in the Old Testament of the Bible? She was a believer in Baal, the fire god, in Ashtaroth, the great goddess that is condemned in the Bible. This is all that's re-emerging today. In this type of Baal worship, they had communication with the dead. They thought it was communication with the dead, but it was just conjuring up demons. Remember when King Saul went to the witch of Endor, and then a demon masqueraded as Samuel, and Saul talked to a demon? It's very fascinating then to see all the reports that appeared on the media February 23rd, 1993, that Hillary Rodham Clinton regularly consults with a spirit of former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, the late wife of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It's very interesting because this was written up in USA Today, the same day, February 23rd, on page 20. Hillary herself brought up the subject of contacting Eleanor's voice from the other side in a major speech that she gave in Hollywood to her friends and pop singing stars. The occasion was a gala dinner that raised money for a statue to be erected of Eleanor Roosevelt in a park in New York. According to Hillary Clinton, her first discussion with the ghost, as she said, of Eleanor Roosevelt was one way. Hillary did all the talking. Then eventually Eleanor began to speak back and gave her valuable advice and suggestions. Gene Williams, who is a celebrity column writer for the USA Today, wrote about it. I want to quote her article of February 23rd, 1993, page 20. Quote, Hillary Rodham Clinton laughed with songstress Julie Wilson who got a bit naughty. And the First Lady said that imaginary conversations with her role model, Eleanor Roosevelt, helped her get through the traumatic campaign year of 1992. Hillary said her mental chats with Eleanor were one of the saving graces I have hung on to for dear life. She went from asking Eleanor, why me? To, how did you put up with this? Meaning being the president of the president's wife of the United States. I'll continue. Then Hillary said she had a wonderful revelation. Eleanor shook her head and said in my mind, you know, I thought that would have been solved by now. You're just going to have to get out there and do it, and don't make any excuses about it. End of quote. You know, I wonder if anyone has ever quoted from the Bible, Deuteronomy 18, to Hillary Clinton, that it's an abomination to the true God of the universe to communicate with familiar spirits. But when did this communication with familiar spirits begin? It began immediately after Bill and Hillary Clinton went to visit a city in California called Summerland, California. Summerland, California was established in 1889 by a group of spiritualists who wanted to go where they could have a private community where they could raise the dead, the spirits of the dead, and communicate with them. So Bill and Hillary Clinton went to Summerland, which all residents around the city say they avoid and drive around it. And yet they went there. And since that time, Hillary Clinton has had conversations with the dead. This was found in the Denver Post, October 17th, 1993, and this is the newspaper article. When you glance back through history, since Eleanor Roosevelt was the very individual that now Hillary Clinton looks toward as her role model, we must take a look at the background briefly of Eleanor Roosevelt. What was she really like? Do you realize that during the 1930s, Eleanor Roosevelt was the most admired woman in the world, and she placed as the most admired woman on 13 separate polls? Unfortunately for the American people, they didn't know who Eleanor Roosevelt really was. The First Lady back in the 1930s was, and I will prove this and give documentation from the New American Magazine, February 22nd, 1993, page 43. Eleanor Roosevelt was a fanatic supporter of left-wing and communist causes and organization. The Communist Party USA considered Eleanor to be their greatest asset. End of quote. Eleanor Roosevelt was a fast friend of all communist, socialist, radical poets, left-wing movie starlets of her day, many of whom she entertained regularly at the White House. She was a confirmed lesbian. In 1978, the Roosevelt Library in Hyde Park, New York, made all of Eleanor Roosevelt's letters open to the public. In one letter, she wrote to her lesbian lover, reporter Lorena Hickok, quote, "Hick, darling, all day I've thought of you, and another birthday I'll be with you. "Oh, I want to put my arms around you. I ache to hold you close." End of quote. Lorena Hickok actually lived in the White House with Eleanor Roosevelt. When Eleanor went on trips, she would write back to her lesbian lover. The First Lady wrote certain letters to her, but then here is one that Ms. Hickok wrote back to Eleanor Roosevelt. Quote, "Good night, dear one. I want to put my arms around you and kiss you at the corner of your mouth. And in a little more than a week, I shall." End of quote. All that documentation was from the New American, February 22nd, 1993, page 43, that examined the letters from Roosevelt. One of the hottest New Age fads today, in addition to necromancy, or raising the spirits of the dead and communicating with them, and feminist goddess worship, is Native American Indian shamanism. It's the rage among women in the New Age occultism. Once again, we find Hillary Clinton at the vanguard of devilish practices. In early May of 1993, in Billings, Montana, Hillary Clinton arranged for an Indian spiritual healer, a shaman, to bless and purify her. Why didn't she go to a Christian church? And she's a member of the United Methodist Church. While there, she had photographs taken of the ceremony. Her eyes were closed, reverently bowed, and the witch doctor performed the ritual over her. This was just prior to a meeting that she was to have concerning the National Health Care Plan Committee. She wanted to make sure she was spiritually cleansed by demons before she went in and confronted the committee. Hillary even had photographs of the event for posterity. Hillary's New Age beliefs are also evidenced by her and Bill's attendance each year at the Renaissance Weekend. This is held each year at the Hilton Head, South Carolina resort area. Several hundred specially invited guests meet annually at Hilton Head, and it's a New Age retreat. The agenda includes numerous pop psychology and other thinky-feely New Age topics. And this was discussed in Newsweek Magazine, October 28, 1992, page 31. Among others who participated, in addition to Bill and Hillary Clinton, were David Gergen, presidential advisor. Then there was Education Secretary Richard Riley, humor columnist Arch Butchwall, former Bush speechwriter Peggy Noonan, who reportedly gave President Bush her theme, or his theme, of 1,000 points of light. Then there was the Olympic gold medalist Edwin Moses, and he was there also. You see, the proceedings and comments from all of these meetings are off the record. They're confidential, and they cannot be given to the public, and we haven't found out what they discussed. Another prime example of the religious leaning of Hillary Clinton is her church affiliation. In Arkansas, while her husband, Bill Clinton, was attending a Southern Baptist church in Little Rock, and also he sang in the choir, and the TV cameras were there, and to make sure that he was in the picture singing with a choir, he joined with it. Hillary refused to attend. She said that Baptist churches were too dogmatic and too fundamentalist. She preferred the more liberal, social activist United Methodist Church. She's a member of that denomination. But her real preference was made known on May 10th, 1982. Her husband, Bill, took Hillary to the Glide Memorial Church in San Francisco. What is San Francisco famous for? Homosexuality? She glowingly told reporters outside of the Glide Memorial Church on the steps that this was the best Mother's Day present anyone had ever given to her. And that was documented in the Christian News, January 18th, 1993, page 8. If this is the truth, what kind of church is the Glide Memorial Church? The church once hosted a national hookers convention, prostitution convention. The congregation is strongly pro-gay and has repudiated nearly every Christian doctrine. To be exact, the pastor of Glide Memorial Church has been quoted as saying that he was tired of hearing about Jesus. So the way things are going, I believe that Hillary Clinton's, this church that she attended, the Methodist Church, and the Glide Memorial Church are not very far apart. Why would I say that? Because in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1993, a Methodist General Conference endorsed a new book of worship for America's 8.9 million United Methodist members. The most startling new prayer entered into this book was unearthed from the 11th century writings of St. Anselm. It addressed Jesus, and I quote, "In truth, Lord, you are my mother," end of quote. This was given in Time magazine, May 25th, 1993, under the article, "A More Maternal God." Now, given the fact that in the past, Hillary Clinton has endorsed the extremes of Mother Earth environmentalism, as well as Marxist ideals and the feminist agenda of all of her presidential cabinet girlfriends, Hillary would feel right at home in a church which addresses Christ as mother. Briette Kos, K-J-O-S, an authority on the new Mother Goddess religion, has stated that the Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, which was endorsed by Bill Clinton and Al Gore, personally represented the United States, was nothing more than a celebration of a pagan goddess, feminist spirituality. He said, the feminist arm of the new Earth Summit blends all four pillars of the green colossus. In other words, the new socialism taking over the world. 1, Marxist ideals. 2, the illusion of peace. 3, earth-centered spirituality. And 4, the feminist agenda. End of quote. He also reported that in Rio de Janeiro, when an African choir began to sing praises to God, Bella Abzug, A-B-Z-U-G, the liberal former congresswoman from New York, cried into the microphone, "You mean the goddess." Not God the Father, but the goddess. And Bella Abzug was an enthusiastic supporter of the candidacy of Hillary and Bill Clinton in 1992. With all I've said today, I believe that we can begin to see how Isaiah 3, verse 12 is being fulfilled. Women shall rule over them. Not the ordinary everyday woman, the housewife, the woman that goes to work as the secretary, not the woman that works maybe even in a government post, but the New Age Goddess movement. I believe with all of my heart that the people are jumping for joy right now. I believe the vigorous, even fanatical efforts of all of these radical, God-despising women that are going into the White House have been generously rewarded by Hillary Clinton. Today, I believe a New Age goddess sits in the White House, preparing the way for the new world order. That's how Isaiah 3, verse 12 is being fulfilled.